During modernity, it was generally assumed that there were certain laws of morality, kind of like the laws of nature. All right? They were called natural laws because people saw them in every society. Anthropologists would study societies in Africa, in Asia, all over the world. Okay, there were certain things that all people agreed on, like it's wrong to murder, it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to, what's in the second table of the Ten Commandments. Okay, so people believed that there were certain laws, moral laws that are written on the human heart. We know that they're true because they're written on our hearts, and you don't have to argue whether or not lying in a court of law is wrong. Everybody knows it is. Okay. So people believe that over time, the human race would conform their behavior to these laws. And maybe that would overcome the desire on the part of people like Hitler and Stalin and Mao Zedong and others from the 20th century to murder upwards of 20 million people. Okay. So there was still this belief that progress was being made. Okay, unfortunately, this didn't work out too well. It became clear to historians and others who studied human behavior that whoever possessed the power to do as they wished, did as they wished. Human history is not a story of how peoples and nations behaved according to natural law. Rather, it is a story of how the powerful oppressed the weak in the world in order to get their way. Science was used not only to make life better for everyone, it, along with the technology it made possible, was used for the purpose of enriching the powerful at the expense of the weak. Okay, so if you were to read a story, for example, about the age of exploration, you know which age I'm talking about, after Columbus, when everybody started going the world over, all right? What did these people do, for example, the conquistadors, when they settled in places like Mexico and Central America? What did they do? They slaughtered. They did. Yeah. Okay. So that's what historians are talking about. What they're saying is that this natural law idea didn't work out. Human beings did what they wanted to do. Even when it was evil, they did it anyway. Okay, now the examples that are often used by postmodernists are the slave trade and colonialism. Okay. The slave trade wasn't just in the American South. The slave trade was also in what we call the West Indies. Okay, in the West Indies, you could grow anything. Sugar, cotton, citrus, anything you wanted, but they needed labor. Okay, so what did they do? They used people that they either believed or pretended to believe were inferior to other people in order to get the labor they needed. So a postmodernist would say that what is going on in history is not progress. We're not getting periodically better and better and better because reason and science are understanding the world in ways we never could before. What a postmodernist would say is if you read history correctly, what you will discover is that superior civilizations, superior, I'll put in quotes, superior civilizations oppressed other civilizations for their own benefit. Okay? You follow what I'm saying so far? All right. So a postmodernist doesn't look at the world from the point of view of reason and progress. They look at the world from the point of view of it's been a struggle between largely Christian civilization, because Christian civilization they believe to be vastly superior to any other civilization. All right. So when Christians went to Africa, all right, after having lived in a place like Rome, for example, and seeing the Sistine Chapel or St. Peter's Basilica, or all the artwork of the Renaissance, or having listened to a Beethoven symphony, or all of Mozart's music. The Western world created a civilization that seemed to them superior than the civilizations that were created in other parts of the world. Are you following me? I'm not saying this is true. I'm telling you how they think. All right. Okay. This is how they think. Okay. So, and as industry developed over time, what happened to the industrial might of the West over time? Where did it go?
China.
To the third world. It went to the third world because, okay, we have an entire bureaucracy that regulates what business can and can't do in terms of the safety of its employees, how long you can work, how old you have to be, all of this stuff. Okay, and in other places they don't have that. Okay, all right. So, so there again, the person thinking in terms of postmodern ways of understanding the history of the human race, they're saying that the West, through colonialism, the slave trade, and establishing industrial complexes in the third world, have exploited other people for their own benefit. Is that making sense? All right.
This has happened all over the world, all over time.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, it's not
The Egyptians did it to the Hebrews.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they did. The Babylonians did it. The Assyrians did it. The Romans did it.
Did the Israelites have slaves too?
They did.
Yeah, and Paul talks about slaves and
Yes.
masters, and
Yeah.
so
They did. They did. Okay, but the head regulations, you might find this kind of funny. If you had a Hebrew slave, you had to treat him better than if you had a non-Hebrew slave. Okay. Now, the modern world, all the way through the 50s, saw human history nevertheless as progressing and getting better. Okay, look what was happening in this country. What happened in this country after the GIs came home from the war? Well, the economy exploded and we created a big middle class. right? Okay, things were getting better here. Not necessarily in other places, but they were getting better here. And people are parochial. We're all parochial to some degree. We look at what's happening in our part of the world and we think, gee, this is great. And we don't think about what's happening in other parts of the world. Another thing that postmodernists do not like is what they call meta-narratives. Okay, what a meta-narrative is, it's a narrative that is designed to help you understand what is happening throughout human history. Okay, the meta-narrative of the modern world was things are getting better over time because science and reason are creating new and better, not only products, but medicine, our ability to understand, our ability to go to the moon, everything is progressing, getting better, okay? So you don't see that in other cultures. You just don't, okay? Okay, now, so let me just sum this up. Modernism believed in progress through science and reason. Postmodernism believes in the fact that human history is actually not one of progress through reason. Human history is a struggle between the haves and the have-nots. And the haves are exploiting the have-nots and have throughout history. That's the postmodern view of history, okay? So they have a completely different way of understanding what's happening in history and what is it. Okay, so if you look at the paragraph that starts some years ago, a historian by the name of Howard Zinn rewrote American history from the point of view of the poor and those who were left out of the American dream. It represented a whole new way of understanding our history. In fact, it turned the whole story. Children were taught about our heroes like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, and the great things they did upside down. This was a postmodern history of America. The use of reason, industrial development made possible by this cultural hegemony, the ideas that there is one truth, meta-narratives that attempt to put this into one historical perspective, and the idea that there is such a thing as a universal morality, or the idea that there is any one identity for all human beings, that also is rejected by postmodernists. All this was abandoned. Instead, history is best understood as a power struggle between people of differing identities, and that some are victors while others are oppressed. That is the more accurate picture of human history, okay? If you ever want to read a bona fide postmodern history of America, Howard Zinn is the name, okay? You can get that book easily on Amazon.
So does he believe that it's actually true that we have oppressed?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah. He sees our whole history as one of oppression. Yeah.
That's understood. If he was just explaining or he was.
No, he believes it. He believes it, yeah. So why go into all this? Okay, there's a simple reason. Now this is the part I want you to understand. Whether you understand the other part or not is we'll get into more later. There is a simple reason. In order to connect the timeless Christian gospel to the audience you are trying to communicate with, you have to be aware of their assumptions concerning reality. When C.S. Lewis was doing Apologetics, he was speaking to modernity. The worldview and assumptions about reality were different in his day. And I should mention that because many people today continue to live with modern assumptions, there are people who still live with the old worldview. His books continue to speak to many people. In fact, some people believe in a combination of modern and postmodern worldviews. In a nutshell, here's how C.S. Lewis became a Christian. Okay? C.S. Lewis was, as I said before, a reluctant convert. However, over time, he came to the realization that his atheism ultimately left him with a meaningless point of view about life. As the famous atheist Richard Dawkins has said, because there is no God, because we are the product of evolutionary factors that have no interest in us, then neither is there any good and evil, no good and bad, no purpose to life, and nothing really to live for. Eternal death takes all that away. That's where he found himself with his conclusions. That's where C.S. Lewis found himself, where Richard Dawkins is now. Okay. Okay. After giving this some serious thought, and after taking into account, number one, our need to be fixed, human nature is clearly broken. After wondering why we are so attracted to beauty, after realizing that there had to be meaning and purpose in life, after coming to the realization that the universe had to have a cause, and after realizing that love was something everyone needed, along with several other insights, he came to believe that Christianity made sense of the world as it is, like no other world view. Consider just how a few Christian concepts concerning the world we live in, okay? And do so with the assumption that reason gets us to the truth. A modernist point of view. We live in a fallen world. Clearly, we are not able to produce the joy, happiness, and love we long for. Moreover, we seek these things in gods of our own making, which is called idolatry. Our hearts long for a place embodied in the beauty of creation. We desire to live in places that have high levels of social cohesion. We all desire to be loved and respected. There are times in life when we go down a self-destructive path and we need forgiveness and a fresh start. And all of this boils down to our need for redemption. What is the Christian answer to this? Because we can't save ourselves from the human condition, God does it for us. He thereby meets our need for love, mercy, and forgiveness. Our problem is that we have a broken relationship with God, and therefore one another. And how does God fix this impossible dilemma? He bears our sins himself, dies, and then overcomes it. When we receive this gift through faith, we are restored to the people we were meant to be in a kingdom that will have no end. This is how C.S. Lewis became a Christian. Relying on reason, it made perfect sense. Now, How are we going to connect to the assumptions of a postmodern generation? So did you follow C.S. Lewis's journey? He saw the world for what it was, and Christianity made sense of it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so next week we're going to look at how we can talk to postmodern thinkers about the Christian faith. And a couple of little clues. Okay. Postmodern thinkers, they may not use the language of the Christian faith like sin, but they are very well aware of it.
In you, not in themselves.
Right, right. And they tend to, yeah, but they have a sense of the corruption of the human heart. And that is one direction we're going to go in when we talk about how to talk to postmodern people and make sense of the gospel to them. Okay? All right. Thank you all.
You